looking to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of the pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. On today's headlines. Metro Manila will remain under general community quarantine or GCQ status until November 30, along with other areas. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council said it is now verifying reports that 3 persons were killed, 13 went missing, and 1 was injured during the onslaught of Typhoon Quinta in the country. And Storm Molave, the 9th of this kind to hit Vietnam this year, is moving west-northwest with speed of 20 to 25 kilometers per hour and is now projected to hit the sea area between Da Nang and Phuyen in the next 24 hours. And thousands of pro-democracy protesters marched to the German embassy in Bangkok to ask German officials to investigate whether King Rama X is conducting Thai politics from Germany, where he spends long periods of time. First, in the Philippines, Metro Manila will remain under general community quarantine status until November 30, along with other areas, according to President Duterte in a pre-recorded address aired on Tuesday morning. In his speech, the president said the mayors of Metro Manila wanted to retain the current quarantine classification in the region.
Ang proposed quarantine qualification for November 1 to 30 herewith is the proposed community quarantine classification subject to appeals from the LGUs. General community quarantine or GCQ from November 1 to 30. In CR, gusto man talaga nila Batangas, Iloilo City, Bacolod City, Tacloban City, Iligan City, Lanao del Sur. Ang gusto ng mga may karamihan, gusto nila make it permanent because they have seen the goodness of the result. Na it has considerably lowered the number of people who are infected with the microbe. So gusto nila ito. Palagay ko naman sa inyo marin itong kapakanan. Look, we are not here to make your life miserable or sad. We are here to make your life comfortable and to make you happy. Wala kaming ibang dito. Bakit kami maglalagay na ito, mga ganitong papel kung what's the point of, sige kayo daldal dyan. So what's the point of working on these figures if it does not do anything good? Pero kung maniwala kayo, para sa inyo yan.
Aside from Metro Manila, Batangas, Iloilo City, Bacolod, Tacloban, Iligan, and the province of Lanao del Sur will remain under GCQ status. Last week, Metro Manila mayors recommended retaining GCQ status for the rest of the year. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque earlier said their proposal is subject to the approval of the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases. He also admitted that the IATF is hesitant about further relaxing quarantine restrictions as it may result in a possible spike in coronavirus cases. As of Monday, the Philippines logged 371,630 confirmed cases with 36,333 active cases, 328,528 recoveries, and 7,039 deaths. And staying in the country, the aviation and airport sector of the Department of Transportation will soft launch a contact tracing app that was co-developed by the Philippine Ports Authority and Cosmotech Philippines Incorporated in 4 airports on Wednesday. Trace, a nationwide and unified QR code-based app, will automate the contact tracing of agencies under the DOTR's aviation and airport sector, such as the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines or CAAP, Manila International Airports Authority, Civil Aeronautics Board, Clark International Airport Corp., and the Mactan Cebu International Airport Authority. The contact tracing app will be simultaneously pilot tested through a soft launch at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport, Clark Internal Airport, Mactan Cebu International Airport, and Davao International Airport. Other airports will soon follow. After a month or by November 28, the use of Trace will be made mandatory for all air passengers in all airports nationwide. And as directed by Transportation Secretary Arthur Tugade, the use of Trace app, which was pioneered by the PPA in ports last month, will eventually be utilized across all modes of transportation to strengthen the government's effort in containing the disease by immediately identifying individuals who had contact with COVID-19 patients. Meanwhile, President Duterte has ordered the Department of Justice to investigate allegations of corruption in the entire government. In a pre-recorded speech, President Duterte read out loud a directive giving the DOJ authority to decide which allegations to investigate. He, however, said he wanted the DOJ to have a special focus on the corrupt-ridden Department of Public Works and Highways. Let's listen in.
This is a memorandum from me, the President, to Secretary Bernardo I. Guevara, Department of Justice. The subject is investigate of allegations of corruption in the entire government. Lahat. Ito, further to the directive issued by the Department of Justice, DOJ, through memorandum from the President dated 7 August 2020 to organize a panel to investigate allegations of corruption in the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation. The DOJ is hereby directed to investigate allegations of corruption in the entire government. Lahat na. Kuridas ito. In pursuit of this directive, the DOJ shall have the authority to decide which allegation to investigate, taking into consideration the gravity thereof and their impact on the delivery of government service. It may create as many panels as it deems necessary to adequate and may invite or direct other bodies and agencies of the government to assist or be a part of such panel. The DOJ shall prosecute and file the appropriate charges against all those involved in the anomalies investigated, whether against government or private person, as may be warranted by the evidence gathered subject to applicable laws and rules. The power and authority of the DOJ under existing laws and previous directives to investigate the commission of crimes and prosecute violators shall not in any way be diminished by this directive. This directive shall remain in effect until June 30 of 2022, pag-alis ko, unless sooner lifted or revoked. Why should I revoke or lift this good order for immediate compliance? Huwag kayong, you might have the notion na, well, the ombudsman is the pinaka number one. Ideally, you go to government, yung malalaki, Yung malaking pera, diretso muna sa ombudsman if I were to have my say. Pero ang gobyerno, ang presidency can investigate, can well, send you to prison. Kaya nga, kung ang prosecution ito is the ombudsman ultimately. But pagkaakyat kasi nito doon, may recommendation na. And if the ombudsman will says that it's a well-studied complaint, then obviously you are going to jail. Ang mahirap niyan, ang mga anak mo mapahiya. Pamilya mo mapahiya sa ganitong, kasi ipapublish ko talaga. Sabi ko, yayariin ko kayo. Yung PhilHealth wala na, skeletal ang remain. Talagang hindi ko bubuwagin yan because hindi madali na it's not easy really to create another one.
In other news, the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council said it is now verifying reports that 3 persons were killed, 13 went missing, and 1 was injured during the onslaught of Typhoon Quinta in the country. NDRRMC spokesperson Mark Timbal said all of these victims died of drowning. He also said the deaths being verified by the NDRRMC include a 60-year-old woman in Siaton Town, Negros Oriental, a man of undetermined age in Bindoy Town, also in Negros Oriental, and another unidentified man in Mogpog Town in Marinduque. Meanwhile, the injured person, also from Mogpog, was hurt after being hit by broken glass. Now, the 13 missing persons include 1 crew member of a yacht that sank off Bawan, Batangas, 8 fishermen in Catanduanes, a fisherman in Calabanga, Camarines Sur, 1 person who was swept by a strong current while crossing a river in Odyongan, Romblon, a fisherman in Iloilo, and another person in Negros Oriental who was also swept by a strong current while attempting to cross a river. Also, he added that the 8 fishermen missing in Catanduanes were part of the 12 earlier reported missing from Barangay Pananogan, Bato Town, Barangay Cagdarao, Panganiban Town, and Barangay Poblacion District 3, Gigmoto Town. Timbal said 4 of the 12 missing fisherfolk were rescued by the Philippine Coast Guard. However, he added that they are still validating reports that another fisherman who is among those missing was earlier rescued. Meanwhile, some parts of the country will continue to experience rains as Typhoon Quinta exited the Philippine area of responsibility on Tuesday morning. Pag-asa said Quinta left the Philippine area of responsibility at 8 a.m. The typhoon is expected to further intensify over the West Philippine Sea and reach its peak intensity within 24 hours. Quinta will bring moderate to heavy with, at times, intense rains over Western Visayas, Occidental Mindoro, Oriental Mindoro, Palawan, including Calamian, Cuyo, and Kalayaan Islands, and light to moderate with, at times, heavy rains over Calabarzon, Davao Region, Cagayan, Isabela, Aurora, and Surigao del Sur. Flooding, including flash floods and rain-induced landslides, may occur during heavy or prolonged rainfall, especially in areas that are highly or very highly susceptible to these hazards. Strong winds, strong breeze to near gale conditions will be experienced in areas under tropical cyclone signal number 1. Meanwhile, at 10 a.m. today, another low-pressure area outside the PAR was estimated based on data at 2,115 kilometers east of southern Luzon. Now, this weather disturbance is likely to enter PAR by tomorrow or Thursday, and it is likely to develop into a tropical depression in the next 48 hours. In other news, Deputy Prime Minister Trin Ding Dong hosted a reception for ADB Country Director Andrew Jeffries, UNICEF representative in Vietnam Rana Flowers, and UNDP Resident Representative in Vietnam Caitlin Wysen. The representatives from the UN agencies affirmed to stand by the side of the Vietnamese government to mobilize international support. Ms. Flowers announced that the UNICEF mobilized $160,000 in aid to provide emergency relief in water, personal and environmental hygiene, healthcare, nutrition, and even education. The UNDP representative, meanwhile, praised the program on building over 3,200 storm-resilient houses over the past 2 years. And she also pledged to work with the Green Climate Fund and the ADB to implement similar projects worth about $30 million for local people in response to natural disasters. Meanwhile, the ADB country director revealed that the lender is considering over an emergency relief package worth $3 million in an effort to support the flood victims in the central region. Deputy PM Dang thanked the donors, and he suggested the international donors work with Vietnamese ministries, sectors, and localities to implement long-term projects which would assist people to promptly stabilize their lives. Meanwhile, Storm Molave, the ninth of this kind to hit Vietnam this year, is moving west-northwest with speed of 20 to 25 kilometers per hour, and it's projected to hit the sea area between Da Nang and Pui in the next 24 hours. That is according to the National Center for Hydrometeorological Forecasting. For the next 48 hours, it will remain on course and reach the area of sea between Da Nang and Pui. This is around 7 a.m. Wednesday. It will continue to pack winds of 150 kilometers per hour. The Hong Kong Observatory, meanwhile, predicts the wind speed to increase to 165 kilometers per hour by 7 a.m. Tuesday before decreasing to 145 kilometers per hour by 7 a.m. Wednesday. When it closes in on Vietnam, it will weaken into a low-pressure area by 7 a.m. on Thursday. Molave is the 17th typhoon to hit the Philippines this year. It will be, meanwhile, the fourth storm to hit Vietnam in a month, during which floods and landslides have killed 130 people. Vietnam is preparing to evacuate nearly 1.3 million people. To Thailand now, thousands of pro-democracy protesters marched to the German embassy in Bangkok to ask German officials to investigate whether King Rama X is conducting Thai politics from Germany, where he spends long periods of time. Take a look.
People from all over the country have been demonstrating in solidarity to fight for true democracy in respect of all demands for the resignation of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha, along with his military junta, the constitutional amendment of, by and for the people, and reform of the monarchy to be truly under the Constitution. Yet the dictatorial government not only continues to ignore our demands, but instead has declared war on its people by arresting those who speak out and severely launching itself against unarmed, peaceful protesters.
Criticizing the monarchy can mean a 15-year jail sentence in Thailand, but the protests have swept away the long-standing taboo on discussing it. The protesters even accused the monarchy of helping to enable decades of domination by military rulers. They're also complaining about spending on the king's European visits at a time the coronavirus has hit the tourism-reliant economy very hard. German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas in Berlin said they were monitoring the kingdom's developments. And he added that the German government is now reviewing the actions of the king. Some in the leaderless youth-led movement are controversially demanding royal reform, including the abolition of the lese-majeste law, a clear accounting of the palace's finances, and for King Maha Vajiralongkorn to stay out of politics. Now, earlier in the day, dozens of supporters in yellow shirts, the royal color, gathered outside the German embassy waving the Thai flag. Take a look.
It's not right to him, and our Majesty cannot say any word about that. I don't have just to criticize him. This is privacy. No, I will not allow them to reform our monarchy.
The yellow shirt protesters dispersed after handing over a letter to the embassy. The royal family is protected by one of the world's harshest royal defamation laws. Any perceived criticism can land a pension in jail for up to 15 years per charge. But the student demands more for reform have shattered those norms, with some demonstrators carrying Republic of Thailand signs at rallies. Many protesters even failed to kneel earlier this month when a royal motorcade passed as dictated by centuries-old tradition. And instead, they brandished a defiant three-finger salute. Now, yesterday, Thailand's parliament opened for a special session to discuss the growing youth-led pro-democracy movement, which is demanding Premier Prayut Chan-o-cha's resignation and the reforms to the ultra-powerful monarchy. Let's listen in.
ชุมนุมพักค้างคืนบ้างนะครับหรือมีกำหนดเวลาอยู่บ้างนะครับซึ่งอันนี้ก็สอให้เห็นว่าอาจจะมีความยืดเยื้ออันผมก็เกรงว่ามันจะมีรัฐบาลเกรงว่าจะเป็นความผิดตามพระราชบัญญัติชุมนุมสาธารณะ2558นะครับแล้วอาจจะมีผู้ฉวยโอกาสเข้ามาแทรกซึมทำให้เกิดความวุ่นวายได้เราทุกคนในที่นี้ควรจะต้องรวบรวมสติปัญญาทั้งหมดที่เรามีความคิดความสามารถและหัวใจของพวกเราทุกคนรวมทั้งเลือดรักชาติทุกหยดในตัวของพวกเราร่วมกันคิดและทำในสิ่งที่สร้างสรรค์ที่จะเป็นประโยชน์สำหรับประเทศชาติเราไม่อยากให้เกิดการปะทะกันไม่อยากเกิดการจราจรในบ้านเมืองนะครับรัฐบาลมีหน้าที่ในการที่รักษาสิทธิ์ของคนไทยทุกคนทั้งประเทศนะครับซึ่งมี70ล้านคน
A former military chief who staged the 2014 coup, Prayut has faced increasing pressure in recent weeks by the protesters who regard his premiership as illegitimate. The premier last week recalled parliament, which was in recess, to discuss how to reduce tensions. The protesters want Prayut's resignation, a rewrite of the military scripted constitution, and for the government to stop harassing political opponents. But the two-day session will not address these demands. They will focus instead on the illegal protests, according to a parliament statement issued last week. Now, the premier cautioned that the session would not discuss the monarchy's role. In remarks made to the special session on Parliament on Monday, meanwhile, opposition leader called on the Thai Prime Minister to stop using the monarchy to justify his hold on power, and they're asking him to resign. Members of the opposition Move Forward Party accused Prayut of trying to use the monarchy to keep power, particularly regarding an incident around a royal motorcade that was used to justify tough emergency measures on October 15. Tensions also spiked after protesters flashed three-finger salutes, a symbol of their movement.
The search for the best continues. Tagisan ng Galing Part 2 is now accepting audition entries. If you are 21 to 59 years old and have what it takes to be the next Tagisan ng Galing Grand Winner as a solo performer, duet, trio, band, or grouped act, submit your audition entries now. Just follow these guidelines. To submit audition entries for the singing category, contact Nikki at 0977-651-9504. This is your chance to be Tagisan ng Galing's grand winner and win 2 million pesos. For more details and updates, visit and like the Tagisan ng Galing Facebook page. What are you waiting for? Join now!
Malalayong lugar ang kanilang narating para maghanap buhay. Tulungan ang pamilyang iniwan sa sariling bayan. Yan ang ating mga overseas Filipino worker. Pero dahil sa di pangkaraniwang pangyayaring hatid ay krisis, may ilan sa kanilang nagpasyang umuwi. Pinagyaman ang sariling lupain, nagtayo ng negosyo na kasama sa puhunan ang sipag at tiyaga. Ang mga OFW, maraming sakripisyo, ninanais maging kapaki-pakinabang maging sa kanilang pagbabalik bansa. Sapagkat ang ating mga bagong bayani, Pilipino pa rin sa puso at damdamin.
Welcome back. In Myanmar, retired General and former Aung San Suu Kyi and former Suu Kyi ally Shwe Man hit the campaign trail for his opposition union Betterment Party or UBP. Take a look. Now, Aung San Suu Kyi's ruling National League for Democracy or NLD is widely expected to be returned to power in the November 8 polls, only the second since the country emerged from outright military rule. But the party faces waning support in many ethnic minority areas where discontent has now intensified. Last week, the Election Commission announced a long list of constituencies where voting will not take place, leaving more than 1 million disenfranchised in Rakhine and hundreds of thousands more elsewhere. Tensions in Rakhine were high even before the move. A civil war between the Myanmar military and the Arakan Army or AA, a militant group fighting for more autonomy for the ethnic Rakhine, has killed and wounded hundreds and forced 200,000 from their homes. Both sides stand accused of abuses, but the AA still enjoys widespread support from a people who have long felt marginalized by the majority Bamar in one of the nation's poorest states. In coronavirus news, a 57-year-old man repatriated from Russia was confirmed the latest case of COVID-19, bringing the patient tally to 1,169. According to the government news website, the man, a native of Ho Chi Minh, took flight from Vietnam VN 5062 from Russia to Van Don International Airport in Quang Ninh Province on October 16 and was quarantined in a concentrated camp in Ninh Binh Province. He is now being treated at the Khao Yen Regional General Clinic in Ninh Binh's Hoa Lu district. This is the 15th COVID-19 patient on board the flight VN 5062. The same day, 4 patients were declared free of the virus, raising the total recoveries to 1,061. And authorities have ordered the closure of 3 restaurants in the Vientiane capital for flouting regulations on noise pollution and operating after hours due to COVID-19 as part of COVID-19 measures. The notice states that the 3 businesses continue to operate beyond the operating hours specified under their operating licenses and that they played loud music or even live music at a level that disturbed nearby residents. Now, according to a decree issued by the government office in October of 2017, all restaurants must be closed at 2300. Furthermore, a notice issued in August by the Prime Minister's office also states that entertainment venues such as bars and nightclubs must remain closed in accordance with COVID-19 prevention and control safety measures. The Laotian Times report said that in order to avoid these strict controls, many bars in Laos operate under restaurant licenses, enabling them to remain open despite restrictions. In Malaysia, meanwhile, the Home Minister Datuk Seri Hamzan Zainuddin said more than 10,000 policemen, including officers, are now placed under quarantine. He also said that 200 of them are undergoing treatment after being confirmed positive for the virus. Malaysia recorded 1,240 new COVID cases yesterday, the highest daily tally of infections since the pandemic began in March. 9 more clusters were detected in different states. Meanwhile, President Duterte said he would prefer a government-to-government agreement for the purchase of coronavirus vaccines. He said it would prevent the risk of corruption. In a pre-recorded speech, the president asked Health Secretary Francisco Duque to ensure that the country's negotiating team would ensure a government-to-government transaction. Take a look.
We will pay. So, maganda sana government-to-government ang transaction. Walang corruption, wala lahat kasi government to government. I'm offering it to China kasi meron na sila. As I have said earlier in the days that followed the COVID contamination, sinabi ko na expect China to come up first because I believe sa Chinese expertise and knowledge. At hindi ako nagkamali, meron na sila. So, to the Chinese government and to the people who are really parlaying the vaccine, you need not look for partners. We can make it government to government, and I will pay you.
Last week, China's Sinovac Biotech has submitted to the Food and Drug Administration Philippines its application to conduct Phase 3 of clinical trials of its vaccine in the country. Sinovac may start late-stage trials of its vaccine in the country as early as next month. Aside from China, the government is also evaluating vaccines of Russia's Gamaleya Research Institute and other pharmaceutical companies. Earlier, the president said he would ask for a discount from China and Russia on the vaccines that each of the two countries have developed. He's hopeful that their leaders would understand his plight amid the global recession. And staying in the Philippines, the Department of National Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana thanked the Australian government for its continued support to the country's efforts to contain the coronavirus disease pandemic. Lorenzana showed his appreciation during a meeting with his Australian counterpart, Defense Minister Linda Reynolds, at the Villamor Air Base, Pasay City last Thursday. Discussions focused on the coronavirus disease, with the SND, or Secretary of National Defense, expressing appreciation for Australia's $1 million support for the expansion of the infectious diseases ward of the Victoriano Luna Medical Center, as well as the donation of $2 million in medical and personnel protective equipment that will capacitate hospitals under the AFP Health Service Command, according to DND spokesperson Arsenio Andolong in a statement. Now, this gesture of support is anchored on the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Program, which expanded the defense cooperation between the two countries following Australia's contributions to the Philippines' counter-terrorism efforts, he added. The bilateral meeting between the two defense chiefs followed a previous meeting at the sidelines of the 6th ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting, or ADMM+, in Thailand in November of 2019, as well as a virtual meeting last May. In another twist to a political crisis in Kuala Lumpur, former Malaysian Premier and now ruling party lawmaker Najib sought support from coalition lawmakers to stand back a prime ministerial bid by opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim. Najib's support for Anwar could deepen turmoil for Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin, who is facing calls to resign after Malaysia's king rejected a request for him to declare emergency rule. Najib, in response to reports on his support for Anwar, said that he has suggested ruling party UMNO work with opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim. But he insisted any such cooperation must not involve the Democratic Action Party, which is part of the Pakatan Harapan coalition led by Datuk Seri Anwar. Now, he was responding to media reports also that claim he had urged UMNO lawmakers to support Mr. Anwar as Prime Minister. The reports also said other UMNO leaders strongly objected to his suggestion. UMNO said after a Supreme Council meeting that it will continue backing Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin's government. Anwar did not immediately respond to requests for comments. ASEAN will be right back.
I don't care how far, 'cause I can go the distance. Ikaw pa nga ang hinahanap ng puso.
It's so clean when you do the high notes.
Bagay na bagay sa yung Tagalog song.
You have your own identity.
Napakahirap pala i-judge itong mga ito pag sobrang mga galing talaga.
Mas matinding sagupaan sa kantahan ng ating mawitness. Abangan ang tapatan. Ito po ang Tagisan ng Galing Part 2 Singing Edition.
Hey there, Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net25.
Tissue boxes mo. Hindi mo ba alam, mauubos daw ang mga tissue products? Bakit naman? Ang raw materials daw ng mask at tissue products ay iisa lang. Saan naman galing ang balitang yan? Ay basta, narinig ko lang din. Maraming din kayang nagpo-post sa Facebook at Twitter, kaya kung ako sa'yo, kumuha ka na din. Sige na't mauna na ako sa'yo
Huwag basta-basta magpaniwala
sa mga nakikita
o nababasa sa social media.
Magsaliksik at i-verify ang lahat ng impormasyon
nakukuha sa internet.
Tandaan,
maging responsable tayo
sa paggamit ng social media
nang hindi magdulot ng panic sa iba.
Kung paanong dapat labanan ng COVID-19.
Ay gayon din ang ating pagsugpo
sa black propaganda
at maling impormasyon.
Dennis Lu,
Lou Omelda,
General Partosa,
Tyranel Pililu,
Hannibal Arevalo,
EBC,
Japan, Euro. We live in interesting times.
And finally, in our news, doctors at a Malaysian hospital are using a special chamber to do virus tests, allowing staff to safely collect COVID-19 swabs without being in the same airspace as their subjects. Take a look.
This thing is airtight, vacuum, and it's positive pressure. Positive pressure means the air inside is pushing outwards. So in this case, the virus will not enter whenever the doctor comes out or comes into the booth. Safety of our team, our summer medical staff team, is our most priority. So we want them to help us to do the test. At the same time, we need to protect their safety. If our own staff don't feel reassured, they don't feel safe, they will not do it. At the same time, I as their supervisor, I need to make sure that they feel comfortable whenever they do this test. So because of that, we created this idea. We have this idea to protect our staff from all possible danger and all that things.
Airtight and air-conditioned, the booth at the Sunway Medical Center in the city of Subang Jaya can fit a single tester behind an acrylic screen, reaching people via a pair of sealed latex gloves. Now, during a test, doctors must insert a long plastic swab down a person's nose and mouth in order to collect samples that can determine if someone has caught the COVID-19 virus or not. Even behind layers of protective clothing and equipment, there's always the risk of infection, as medical staff must often tend to hundreds or even thousands of people a day. The hospital has been running a single booth in its virus screening tent since the end of May, with a second booth due to be installed soon. Malaysia is going through a relatively moderate outbreak, or now an outbreak of the COVID-19 virus, though a sudden spike of disease has pushed infections past 26,000 cases. Some 229 people in the Southeast Asian nation have so far died from the virus. And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nation. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.